Good evening and welcome to Undaunted, bringing into the news untold stories. I am Star Smart. Let's begin. The fun of Big Babanki, Kejum Keku, a village in Tuba local government area, Mezam County, of the Midland zone of Ambazonia, who brought La Republic du Cameroon terrorist military into his fondom for purported security, but instead increased the insecurity tremendously, reducing the number of his fondom population, especially the youth, as the forces of La Republic du Cameroon ended up killing more than protecting anyone. This fund has finally opened up on the prevailing security situation in his fundum. The traditional ruler now regrets, confirming that most atrocities in Big Babanki have reached alarming proportions since the entry of La Republic's military. It is interesting to read about this interview and the regrets of the fun, as it reminds us of the same regret that Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia has for joining La Republic du Cameroon. Unlike the peoples of Southern Cameroon, who are determined to see the occupational forces of La Republic and all her coordinated institutions leave Ambazonia, His Royal Highness the Fawn of Babanki is not willing to force the colonial La Republic soldiers to leave his fundum the same way he brought them. A comparative analysis of the atrocities committed in Big Babanki shows that before the presence of the colonial forces in that fundum and after their presence there is nothing compared to the atrocities committed by these La Republic terrorist soldiers in less than a month. This is a very sad story from fire pan to fire scenario, but let's get more to these epiphany on the side of the fun in the full briefings of Undaunted tonight, coming right up after the prime headlines.
Here are the prime headlines for today. The first story, La Republique du Cameroun gendarmerie causes the drowning of an Ambazonia refugee in Douala. A priest, his junior brother, mistaken for a thief and given a beating by a mob in Bui. Human rights lawyers say they are charging the gendarmes who tortured an Ambazonia in Yaoundé. Drivers in Kumba are experiencing tough times. The fun. You should know the fun of Big Babanki regrets to have invited La Republique du Cameroon colonial military into his fundum. And in sports, UEFA will change the name of the Europa Conference League 2 years after the tournament's creation. And on the foreign scene, Ukraine's cheap missile outperforms world's best S-400 systems in the war zone. Now, let's get the news in detail.
Our vision in this interim government is to make APC a leader and a real war horse of our struggle. We want to grow it, expand it, hire and train more hands, and broadcast round the clock, around the world, and take command of the media space of this world.
You can enjoy all round the clock, 24/7 exclusive moments of bliss as an ABC Amba TV Club member. A cappella. Latest Nigerian stroke African movies, global politics, ABC Amba news and updates, historical documentaries, and lots more. In our daily programs, we have Undaunted, ABC Amba News, bringing into the news untold stories with Onyi Opala and Star Smart. Exclusive discussion, revolutionary panel conversation, infotainment, edutainment, intro governmental debates on topical issues with Tar Paddy King, State of the Liberation Movement, fronting IG and people of Ambazonia's position, the Struggles Weekly Update with Secretary Martin Mungwa, PhD, FASCE. Health is wealth, health education and awareness within the Ambazonian community with Dr. Yaya. Liberation prayer and intercessory ministry for Ambazonia with Pastor Victor Amba. Our freedom, spiritual awareness and education for the Ambazonian community with Pastor Victor Amba and Pastor Commando. Church and politics, neutralizing the myths and preconceived religious and political philosophies that limit the Christian involvement in the realms of decent politics with Pastor Commando. The Horizon, the voice of the Ambazonian woman with Dr. Patience Abiedo and Lady Casey. Our Amber History, bringing to limelight the hidden history of Ambazonia to the world with Pastor Commando. Appointment on community building, education on patriotism within the Ambazonian communities with Ma Rachel Itatima. Ethics for an Emerging Nation, watchdog of basic principles and morals of a nation at war with Ma Dorothy Ngwa. Upcoming programs: Pigeon News, Vernacular Talk Show, County Roots, Activists Corner, Amba Focus, only on ABC Amba Television. We the people, the voice of the voiceless. For 24/7 access, subscribe as a club member on www.abcambatv.com/subscribe.
La Republic du Cameroon is not a safe refuge ground for Ambazonians. It is true that Ambazonia is too hostile as a result of the ongoing war in southern Cameroon, declared by the agent president of La Republic du Cameroon. Running to La Republic du Cameroon shouldn't be an option. La Republic has proven to be a graveyard and not a refuge ground for Ambazonians fleeing hostilities back home. Ambazonia Refuge family in the colonial economy of La Republic du Cameroon in Douala is still in consternation after their personnel drowned in a river after being chased by La Republic du Cameroon gendarmerie officers. The question is, how can a so-called trained La Republic du Cameroon gendarmerie officers stun an armless civilian fighting his life from the waves? Well, let's begin here tonight. How are you, Steph?
Very well, Oni. Good evening, Ambazonians. Well, an Ambazonian refugee has drowned in Douala, the political capital of La Republique, after being stoned by the colonial La Republique gendarmerie officers in an attempt to swim his way across a river. Reports hold that this Ambazonian refugee seized himself from the hands of the La Republique gendarmerie elements and jumped into the river to free himself. Eyewitness account says that he narrowly swam himself across the river but was stoned by La Republique gendarmerie thugs. His strength was weakened by the shot he received from the stones they threw at him, and he drowned in trying to swim away from them. The colonial La Republique security officers, while on the field, held the boy and were crossing with him on the bridge. He attempted to escape and fell in the river, an eyewitness account says.
As he was struggling to swim to safety, the La Republique du Cameroon gendarmes were stoning him. He was hit by one of the stones and was unable to swim and drowned in the mud inside the river. Rescue teams came in, and after 5 hours of search, he was pulled out of the river dead. His father went to call the police. Surprisingly, the Colonial Republic Cameroon police demanded that he should pay money for them to come and make an assessment of the situation. The poor father could not afford it and went back without the Colonial Republic Cameroon police. Well, they are contemplating dumping the cops at the Gendarmerie Brigade where its elements committed the act.
On to more ills done. Wonders indeed they say will never end. There is an unfortunate situation which happened in the Atlantic zone of Amazonia with a young man nursing wounds received from an angry mob who mistaken him for a thief. It is an unfortunate situation that the said person who stepped out into the night to pick up his wife at the agency was confused for a thief and beaten to a near death experience. Now, what is the punishment of those angry mob who committed this offense since they are in the hands of the Colonial La Republique police element?
A junior brother of a Reverend Father, Nicholas, has cheated death after being beaten by a group of individuals who confused him for a thief they were after. The unfortunate situation gathered by Undaunted is that the wife of this young man, whom Undaunted never got the name, returns from Yaoundé late at about 1 a.m. Now, the victim, who never wanted to allow his wife to spend the night at the agency, decided to go for his wife and only ended up in the hospital nursing wounds and resisting the pains from broken bones. A group of boys who were after a thief mistaken their priest brother for the thief by the color of his dress. Without asking questions, they bounced on him with all types of ammunitions.
Well, it is only at the point where they were about to set him ablaze. One of them pleaded with the others to hear him out before lynching him. It is at this point that they learned that he was not the thief, but a man just going to the agency to pick up his wife. He was then rushed to the hospital in a very bad shape, as you can see, though the Colonial La Republic forces have bundled those who perpetrated the act. The deed has still been done. Many have lost lives as a result of this mob lynching, this mob justice carried out on them without prior information and findings.
Well, yesterday on ABC Amber TV News, we reported that a young Amazonian from Nkambe local government area, DMC, was arrested and tortured to near death by Colonial La Republic de Cameroon gendarmes in Yaoundé. Today, human rights lawyers of Amazonian extraction have joined voices as they threaten to charge the Colonial La Republic de Cameroon gendarmes for illegal torture and detention. On his way to that of Barrister Mongwa Nicodemus, another human rights lawyer, Barrister Tamfo Richard, on Saturday night, shared a piece of information about the alleged torture of a young man working in an interurban transport agency called Nsubois.
Now, the legal mind disclosed that one of the leaders of the company, Manjong Henry, was arbitrarily picked up from around the BM Assi neighborhood in Yaoundé on June 6, 2023. He was taken to their headquarters opposite the Colonial National Assembly, where they handcuffed him on a mango tree and tortured him with machetes, cables, and other hard objects that damaged his left eye. The deadly torture was in an attempt to force statements out of his mouth. The victim was accused of communicating with Amazonian restoration fighters and was aware that some bombs were planted in a bag that arrived at their agency. Luggage was dispatched from Nsoboy's travel agency Bamenda to Nsoboy's travel agency Yaoundé containing a bomb wherein they alleged he communicated with someone or someone communicated with him about the said luggage. This is what the lawyer narrated.
Mahjong Henry was later transferred to the Judicial Service of the National Gendarmerie, where he remained detained until the 23rd of June. When he was released after 3 weeks of intense intervention mounted on the authorities by Barrister Amongwa Nicodemus, it was instantly reported that the management of Nsobois abandoned him. But thereafter, the management of Nsobois said, in their words, "This is a matter whose investigations are still going on, and at my level, I don't think I'm allowed to comment much about it."
Well, as per Mahjong Henry being abandoned, he says, "I wish to state that we are not guilty of such allegations. I am sure that when the ongoing investigations are over, we might be able to talk further on the matter. The human rights lawyer have said they are charging the gendarmeries who tortured the victim. Manjing Harry, however, is undergoing medical follow-up, and Undaunted will continue giving viewers update on this human rights violation.
The action of occupational La République du Cameroon so-called forces of law and order is fast transforming clando drivers into time bombs. Clando drivers in Combo are working with accumulated anger in them, and at the least provocation can't control themselves but pour out their anger. This is a result of the amount of money they pay per day to the colonial La République du Cameroon's so-called forces of law and order at extortion points.
Now, a Clando driver has stabbed a young man in the head just because he was obstructing him. This incident is caused by the actions of the occupational forces of La Republique on drivers. Some of the road accidents on our highways are because of the bad state of mind La Republique forces put them in. A young man said a young man has been rushed to the hospital after he was stabbed by a Clando driver this morning in Limbe, Faco County of the Atlantic Zone of Ambazonia. According to some commercial drivers at my full park, Limbe, who witnessed the incident, the driver stabbed the young man in his head when he tried to stop him from passing.
Well, the driver is reported to have taken particular notice of the young man who always stops him along the road. The said victim is not a park official, law enforcement officer, or any official concerned with public transport. The incident caused a commotion at my 4. All Clando drivers parked their cars and refused to work in solidarity with their colleagues. Drivers reported that this tension started 4 days ago. They have been asked to pay 50,000 francs to the Colonial Council. Fuel prices have hiked, and there are countless La République du Cameroon military extortion points along the road. All of this, they say, have made work slow for them.
Well, frustrated with the demanding working condition, the said driver could not withstand any more provocation whatsoever. This incident is just an outburst of the frustration these drivers have been witnessing. Most drivers have resorted to using the other route through Tole to go to Boya. Meanwhile, dozens of passengers wishing to leave Limbe are stranded because most transport vehicles have been parked. At press time, the nuisance is at the hospital being attended to.
And moving on, the fun of Big Babanki, Kijam Keku, a village in Choba local government area, Mazam County of the Midland zone of Ambazonia, has opened up on the prevailing security situation in his fandom. In an exclusive interview with Mimi Metho Info, the traditional ruler regretted that armed gang atrocities in Big Babanki had reached alarming proportion, forcing him to call in the military to restore order. Well, it is interesting to read about the interview's regret of having invited the colonial La Republique du Cameroon military. It is the same regret that Southern Cameroon's Amazonia regrets ever joining La Republique du Cameroon.
Well, unlike the people of Southern Cameroon, who are determined to see that the occupational forces of La Republique and all hard coordinated institutions leave Amazonia, His Royal Highness the Fawn of Babanki is not willing to force the colonial La Republic soldiers out of his fandom. A comparative analysis of these atrocities committed in Big Babanki Amazonian fighters for the time they have been in that fandom is nothing compared to the atrocities committed by the colonial La Republic soldiers in less than a month. As reported by Mimi Menfo Info, in 2023 alone, Amazonian fighters active in Big Babanki have killed no fewer than 6 civilians, shot a woman in the leg, and assaulted scores of women, and have also usurped the powers of the traditional authorities.
La Republique du Cameroon occupational forces, on their part, have killed dozens of civilians, including a nursing mother, a deaf and dumb and middle-aged man, adding to the civilian killings. The La Republique du Cameroon terrorist soldiers carried away one gold, 3 pigs, and too many animals that belong to the deceased. Now, this implies that La Republic du Cameroon forces have instead done more harm than good. Now, in the exchange with Mimi Mefo Info, Fon confessed that La Republic du Cameroon military is targeted at killing civilians, but unfortunately confessed that the La Republic du Cameroon military has come to stay. So, the Fon has powers to inform the colonial La Republic du Cameroon military without the necessary powers to prevent them from killing his people.
Well, the fund of Big Babanki, Fon Vubasig Benjamin, has acknowledged that the Colonial Republic soldiers are targeting civilians for the kill. Well, this confession is revealed in an exchange the fund had with Mimi Mefo Info. The fund was responding from Yaoundé, the colonial political capital of La Republic, from where he had been ruling his fondom.
Well, you will recall that the colonial La Republic du Cameroon government military invaded Big Babanki at the request of the Fon, who claimed that armed gangs were committing a lot of atrocities to his people. Well, this particular news detail we brought to you throughout last week. From June 11th, the number of human casualties is more than a dozen, with women included. The village is in chaos now. People are scared. Just as I am speaking to you, three people were killed a day before yesterday. One guy just sent me a picture of his uncle who was killed and burnt in his house by state forces. Now, not everyone that has been killed in Amba. Let us be honest here. It means that the military is just targeting civilians. The rate of destruction is huge. Shops are being looted. Now, this is what the fund said. The question is, why not call off this military? When asked what is the way forward, in his response, he says the way forward is that we cannot reverse the situation at hand. He goes on to say the military has come to stay, so the way forward for us now is to work with hierarchy of the military to stabilize the situation so that the innocent civilians don't get killed or harmed anymore. Why not call them off is the question.
Well, the fund has been ruling his fondom from Yaoundé and is still confident that he can manage the situation of his fondom from outside. He says, I have been working in Yaoundé even before I became fond. It is not as if I ran to Yaoundé. I've been working in Yaoundé for over 30 years now, and he says he's been ruling his people. We have strong institutions in the village. I have the traditional council, the Ngumba, and other institutions that are in the village. If there's any case of military excesses, I can handle it with a military hierarchy. The population should remain calm. This is what he said. I hope he doesn't do that when it's too late, when the entire village is already empty of youth and leaving people. The fund refused the allegations that he usurped power and became the fund of Kejum Kiko. You cannot usurp a palace because many people must come together to enthrone the fund. The previous fund, Fund Vubasing Simon Vuga II, had land problems, among other problems, with the villagers, which forced him to voluntarily abdicate on 3rd February 2004 and left the village. He says, I was enthroned in June 2004. On 19 January 2006, he came back to the village and wanted to take over the throne. He was lynched by the villagers. I was in Yaoundé at the time. I lamented that if I was in the village when he returned, I would have preferred that the villagers kill me and spare his life. This ugly incident happened close to 2 years after I became Fon, he said. Spare him and kill me instead. But then you watch your fondom, people of your fondom get killed by people you brought in to protect. This is rather ironic and seemingly not very the case. Earlier this week in Sudan, Muhammad Hamdan Dangalo, RSF's leader, better known as Hemeti, announced a ceasefire in an audio recording broadcast on Al Arabiya television on Tuesday. The ceasefire is set to take effect on Tuesday and Wednesday. Although Hemeti had condemned abuses carried out against civilians, including those by his own RSF, his soldiers have committed atrocities that will pass for war crimes. Reports have linked the RSF to violations in Darfur City, which left a rotten corpse on the street.
Well, according to AFP, 14 civilians were killed in a battle over Khartoum's main police base between the army and the paramilitary force on Sunday, while the army accused the RSF of carrying out a flagrant attack against state institutions to protect civilians. The latter claimed a military victory. The headquarters is under our complete control, and we have seized a large number of vehicles, armed, and ammunition, said the RSF. The conflict in Sudan, which began in April, has killed about 2,800 people. According to the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project, the army and paramilitary outfits have claimed they killed or captured hundreds of their enemies, and millions of people have been forced to flee the country.
Muslims gathered for Eid al-Adha prayers in Port Sudan on Wednesday as fighting raged on in Khartoum and West Darfur. RSF paramilitary commander General Mohammed Hamadan Daglo announced on Monday a two-day unilateral truce in advance of the Muslim holiday. Daglo expressed hope the holiday will provide an opportunity to reconciliation among the Sudanese people, acknowledging the challenging humanitarian conditions caused by the war.
Well, in the televised address on Tuesday, General Abdel Fattah el-Burhan also called for a unilateral ceasefire and called on young men to defend the country joining the armed forces. But in recent days, fighting has intensified after a series of ceasefires deals agreed are talks led by the United States and Saudi Arabia in Jeddah failed to stick. According to the United Nations, the conflict is worsening to alarming levels in the Sudan's west, with Western nations condemning widespread human rights violations, conflict related sexual violence, and targeted ethnic violence in Darfur.
Now, Eid al-Adha, or the Festival of Sacrifice, is one of the most important Muslim holidays, marking the culmination of the annual Hajj in Saudi Arabia. The raging war, scarcity of humanitarian aid, and the refugee crisis make for dire celebrations. We can only imagine what celebrations would have been like around the world without ongoing wars like this.
Well, on Monday, we told you that Ukraine is to receive two German IRIS-T SLM air defense systems in 2023 and Germany to hand over four more air defense systems in 2024. Well, today, Ukraine's chip missile outperforms world-best S-400 systems in war zone, which wreaks havoc on Russian warplanes.
A lot of digital ink has been spilled into the firepower packed by the hypersonic missiles, fighter jets, and big guns in the Russian-Ukraine war. Contrary to the hullabaloo around the expensive high-tech weapons, the humble man-portable air defense system, MANPAD, has emerged as the most effective weapon of this war against fixed-wing, rotary aircraft and drones. Dubbed the worst nightmare of Russian fighter jets, manpads have wreaked havoc on low-flying combat jets, helicopters, and drones. They're usually made up of three parts: a disposable carriage with a launch tube, which carries a missile, a power system, and a trigger or firing unit. The Oryx website puts the losses of Russian fighters jets at 36. Russia lost 93 helicopters, 9 unmanned combat aerial vehicles, and 128 reconnaissance UAVs a year into the invasion.
The Ukrainians just has spread the numbers even higher. They have firmed the bulk of defense aid that the NATO countries have provided to Ukraine. The Ox website puts the losses of Russian fighter jets at 36. Russia lost 93 helicopters, 9 unnamed combat aerial vehicles, and 128 reconnaissance UAVs a year into the invasion. The Ukrainian sources put the numbers even higher. They have formed the bulk of defense aid that NATO countries have provided to Ukraine.
As Russia invaded Ukraine, the latter fielded medium and long-range air defenses like the S-300s and Buk M1s, which forced the Russian fighter jets to fly at altitudes below 4,500 meters right into the range of the Man-Portable Air Defense System, that's MANPAD. This MANPAD accounted for a significant number of shootdowns of Russian aircraft. While explaining this, a Royal United Services Institute report said, without air superiority, Russia's attempts at strategic air attack have been limited to expensive cruise and ballistic missiles barrages at a much more limited scale. This failed to achieve strategically decisive damage during the first 7 months of the invasion.
Well, Eagler S is the cheapest system among those deployed in Ukraine, but it doesn't kill with high probability of killing. According to a declassified CIA report, the Eagler I has a PK, that is probability of kill, of 0.3 to 0.4 against unprotected targets, which is reduced to 0.24 in the presence of decoy flays and jamming. In another report, the manufacturer claimed a PK of 0.59 against an approaching and 0.44 against receding F-4 Platoon 2 fighter not employing inferred countermeasures or evasive maneuvers.
The same reports add that tests in Finland have shown that compared with the French Mistral, the 9K38 Eagler has inferior range and seeker sensitivity and smaller warhead, but it has a superior resistance to countermeasures. In the past, the success rate of Eagler against enemy forces has evoked admiration and fear, but the full-scale war between Ukraine and Russia has brought to the fore the importance of MANPADs in denying air access.
All right, and that's all for foreign reports. Coming up next is sports. Well, in sports, UEFA is set to change the name of their third European competition less than 2 years after the creation of the Europa Conference League.
The New York Yankees' Domingo German pitched his way into the record books on Wednesday night, tossing Major League Baseball's first perfect game in nearly 11 years. German 30 allowed no runner on base by any means, including through a hit, a walk, or by hitting a batter. This is on baseball, and Gab Ellison has more.
Latest world sports. Football. UEFA will change the name of the Europa Conference League, UECL, 2 years after the tournament's creation. UEFA are set to change the name of their third European competition less than 2 years after the creation of the Europa Conference League. Established in 2021, Jose Mourinho's Roma were the inaugural winners of the European tournament, which aims to give teams another route into Europa League qualification, as well as silverware and prestige. Mourinho placed so much value in becoming the first manager to win all 3 European competitions. He had the 3 trophies of the Champions League, Europa League, and Europa Conference League inked on his bicep to commemorate the feat. This year, West Ham hoisted the trophy aloft after beating Fiorentina 2-1 in Prague in a win that saw the Hammers clinch their first major trophy in over 40 years. But UEFA's ruling, which was confirmed by a vote at an executive committee meeting on Wednesday, will see future entrants compete for a different honor. Starting from the 2024-2025 season, the competition will drop Europa to become the UEFA Conference League. This decision, the organization claims, has been fueled by a desire to ensure the competition can grow as a standalone entity. In a statement shared on Wednesday, UEFA said, Introduced under the Europa umbrella at the start of the 2021 to 2024 commercial cycle, the new competition has quickly established itself amongst a broad audience after 2 successful seasons. Research amongst fans, as well as commercial partners, has found that removing Europa from the name of the competition will enable further development as a standalone competition, and this proposed change was approved by the UEFA Executive Committee. It will be effective in the new cycle as of the 2024-2025 season. Together with the UEFA Europa League, the UEFA Conference League will continue to deliver Thursday night football to fans across Europe and beyond. A strong link between the competitions will remain in place as both brand identities will remain very close and both competitions will continue to be sold to broadcast partners and sponsors together. The Premier League's entrance for the 2023-2024 campaign, Aston Villa, will not be impacted by the name change. At the same conference, UEFA confirmed venues for both the 2024 final and the 2025 final. But side may be focusing their efforts on getting to Athens and competing in the Hagia Sophia Stadium, the newly built stadium of Super League Greece side AEK Athens. As the stadium is yet to be used by AEK, UEFA will confirm in November whether the 32,000 capacity ground is fit for purpose. In 2025, the final will take place at Stadion Wrocław, the home of Polish outfit Śląsk Wrocław, which has a capacity of over 45,000. The Eden Arena, which hosted the 2023 final, was widely condemned for its 19,370 capacity, which saw a mere 4,890 tickets allocated to Hamas fans. Baseball. New York Yankees pitcher Domingo Germán throws 24th perfect game in MLB history. The New York Yankees' Domingo Germán pitched his way into the record books Wednesday night, tossing Major League Baseball's first perfect game in nearly 11 years. Germán, 30, allowed no runner on base by any means, including through a hit, a walk, or by hitting a batter, while pitching all 9 innings in the Yankees' 11-0 road victory against the Oakland Athletics. It was just the 24th perfect game in Major League Baseball history, and the first since Seattle Mariners pitcher Felix Hernandez threw one against the Tampa Bay Rays on August 15, 2012. After retiring, Oakland batters Aledmys Diaz and Shea Langeliers in the 9th inning, Germán got Esteury Rose to hit a grounder to third baseman Josh Donaldson, who made a throw to first base to seal the historic victory. Germán, who struck out 9 of the 27 batters he retired, stretched out his arms in celebration before teammates swam to embrace him. "So exciting," Germán said after defeat, speaking to the Yes Network through a translator. When you think about something very unique in baseball, you know not many people have an opportunity to pitch a perfect game. To accomplish something like this in my career, it's something that I'm going to remember forever. Be part of history. The Dominican-born right-hander, who is the first pitcher from his nation to throw a perfect game, cited the death of a relative a few years ago as inspiration for his historic performance. Unfortunately, 2 days ago, an uncle of mine passed away. And I cried a lot yesterday in the clubhouse, so I had him with me throughout the whole game. I was thinking about him, and it happened, Germán said. This game is a tribute to him. He would have been so happy. He was always someone that really brought a joy to our family, and it happened for him to watch it this way from up there. Germán's accomplishment was a great way for him to remedy recent struggles. He had allowed 17 runs over 5 1/3 innings in his 2 previous starts. In May, Germán was given a 10-game suspension by MLB for violating the foreign substances regulations after being ejected from a game against the Toronto Blue Jays for using an illegal sticky substance. "I'm just happy for Domingo," Yankees catcher Kai Higashioka said. "He's had a rough last couple starts and he's kind of been dragging a little bit, and just for him to do this and get back to being himself, I kind of always felt out of anyone he was a really good chance to do something like this. And for it all to come together tonight is amazing." The win by the Yankees, 44-33, left them 9.5 games out of first place in the American League East. Oakland so far has the worst record in the majors at 21-61. Gab Ellison reporting from Undaunted, ABC Amba News.
All right, thank you so much, Gab Ellison, for that report. But before we go, let's take a recap of our major stories.
And Undaunted tonight, we brought to you La Republic gendarmerie causing the drowning of an Amazonian refugee in Douala. We also brought to you a priest's younger brother who was mistaken for a thief and lynched by the mob. Human rights lawyers say they are charging the gendarmes who tortured an Amazonian in Yaoundé.
Tonight on Undaunted, we told you that condo drivers in Kumber are experiencing tough times. We told you that the fund of Babanki has regretted to have invited La Republique du Cameroon military gendarmes into his fundum. And in sports, we told you that UEFA will change the name of the Europa Conference League 2 years after the tournament's creation. And that was it for tonight on Undaunted, bringing to the news on your stories. On behalf of Star Smart and the entire Undaunted crew, we say thank you for tuning in.
Leave you with ABC Amba TV images. Good night and God bless you.